Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is the Business Talk Show. We are welcoming back someone who's been on one of our other programs, Women in Business, and we're super excited to have her share additional information with this audience. Before we bring out Kalee, let's welcome the star of our show, Mr. CINI is in the house. Al, come on out. Hello.
Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, always a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you. Always great to see you. And for people who don't know, you've been with me since the very beginning. I don't know, 120 some episodes, I think. Why do you stay around now?
Well, because first of all, it's great working with you. And second of all, we get to meet some terrific people and have some great conversations. And that's always fun for me.
Absolutely. And your interest in business, you are an entrepreneur. You've got a couple of businesses yourself. You've been helping people not only here, but also at rvntelevision.com. Tell us about your work as an entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, right now, my primary focus is on a team building exercise that we call Pro Fit for Teams. And the contact information is there. You can see that on your lower third, but you can reach me at al@pro-fit4teams.com. And it's a team building experience that in half a day connects the members of a team with the purpose they share. And what we found in our research is that one of the most engaging, intrinsically motivating experiences somebody can have is the experience of finding meaning in their professional life. We have a workshop that mines meaning out of the minds, the brains of the people that actually participate in the team. That's Pro Fit for Teams, and more information at pro-fit4teams.com.
Thank you so much, Al. Today, we're going to be talking about building wealth. And this is so critical and vital as an entrepreneur. If you've ever watched Shark Tank or spoken to a new entrepreneur, finances are a big area where people get tripped up and may even go out of business because they didn't manage their money correctly or they didn't anticipate something that was coming for them. So I'm super excited to welcome Kalee Boisvert to our program and hear more about financial advising and how she can help our audience. Welcome. Nice to see you, Kalee.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. And, you know, I've interviewed you before and I really enjoyed it because you provided so much content that's really relevant as well as tips. What is it about being a financial advisor that keeps you in this profession? It's a tough area and you've got to stay well versed on all of the laws and the rules. What is it that keeps you super excited about this?
That's a great question. You're right, because there is ups and downs. And I think, like you mentioned, that with all entrepreneurs, that journey that you go through, there's just ups and downs in general when you have your own business. But I think for me, it's that passion of helping people with their finances and money, because I became like a sort of active participant or student to the industry really early on. Like I was fascinated by money at a really early age. When growing up, we didn't have a lot of money, but I was noticing, okay, you know, other people maybe don't have that same sort of scarcity or lack of money. And so I wanted to figure out, like, if I could solve the money equation or understand more about it, could that make it easier? So I became, very interested and intrigued by money. And I was always kind of a math person. Like, I think I have a math mind naturally. So it was ongoing. I just wanted, like, I would read every book on money and finances, and I would love it. And so there was so much knowledge I had brewing, and I wanted to share that with people. So I think that's what keeps me going. It's like, it's never a dull
And
moment when
Kalee,
we talk to people. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I think there was a delay there.
Oh, okay.
no,
Sorry.
that's great. I know you have a particular area of specialty too in working with women that you believe
Yes.
maybe are a kind of a special case for dealing with finances. Maybe you can outline that for us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, there's not necessarily a difference between men and women, but I think sometimes women have a little bit more of a struggle with confidence when it comes to money and wealth building. So a friend was talking about it the other day. She was saying she was having like imposter syndrome in her business and what she was trying to start. And I was like, that's so interesting. I realized that's sort of what I'm seeing in the money field, is that women seem to have this imposter syndrome show up when it comes to money and finances and wealth building. And maybe that's part of the problem, is just that we don't, give ourselves enough credit. We don't, we're not as like keen to sort of just dive in and do it. So there's a little bit more hesitation. So I think it's that confidence building. And if we look back and go back in time, well, women historically weren't as much involved in finances. Like, it had been more of like a male dominated space for some time. But obviously that's changing, and, it's a lot different now. And women could be single moms. They could be, the breadwinner of the family or whatnot. So it's really important that women, catch up or do what they need to do to kind of get past that feelings of imposter syndrome or that lack of confidence, to actually take action with their money. Because that's the biggest thing, is taking action is what leads to the results. But I think that's the difference between men and women, is sometimes women seem a little bit more, keen to stay on the sidelines, or a little bit more concerned about kind of like this, this feels scary, this feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, great points. Thank you, Kalee. What I'm wondering is, and Al, as a man, I don't know how you feel about this, but Kalee, I found with myself as well as with other women that we actually impose this glass ceiling of how much money we think we can earn. And I'm not sure if it's because of imposter syndrome or what it is, but we lead with our hearts. We want to help other people. We want to help as many people as possible. And yet at the same time, doing that might be precluding us making a huge income. Whereas some of the men I've known in various capacities in life, they're all about the bottom line, the dollar. How much money are you making? How much are you going to make? As opposed to, oh, you're helping people. Isn't that nice? So what do you think that if there is a relationship between women and money and the way they look at it and how men look at it?
Yeah. Well, you're right. Like, I think we need to change how we're looking at it. Because women, I think it's like how we're socialized, unfortunately. So it starts really early on. So there's a lot of like embedded sort of money baggage we have to work on. But like, as women, it's, it's a lot more appealing to be kind and, generous and willing to help others. Like, it's like, oh, that's good when you're doing those things. And men, it's like ambitious and, bottom line, like you said, and make money and profit. So it's women, we have to unlearn these things, because if they're socialized or if they're kind of put upon us by others, then it's maybe not even our beliefs, right? And so we have to do a lot of work to change that. And again, to kind of catch up and say, like, it's no different for men or women. It should be just as acceptable for women to be really focused on the numbers and bottom line. And it doesn't make us bad people. It doesn't mean we're greedy. It doesn't mean, it's like, oh, who is she? She wants, money or something like that. That's good. that's a good quality to have, and we're all better off when women are succeeding and thriving as well. So I think we have to do some of that work, unfortunately, that has been kind of put like on us by society. But I write about this in my book. I have a chapter, and it's called like, you can, like your money, and you might even grow to love your money. And it's just that, it's like embracing, hey, I'm allowed to like money. It's okay. It's not a negative character trait or quality for women to like money, for women to want abundance, for wanting success, and for building wealth and breaking through that glass ceiling. Like, that's a good thing. And so it's changing that mindset. And if it feels a little bit uncomfortable, we have to kind of dig into like, where is this coming from? Is it actually me, or is it someone, thinking like what society expects of me? But yeah, by the end of the chapter, I hope, I ask the reader to just yell out, I love money. Like, can we start getting women to just say those things and be, unapologetic and feel okay about it?
I love money. Yay! I love money.
If guys can say that too.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing.
No.
You've written a book. The book
Yes.
is Make Money Your Thing. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your book. I know it's aimed primarily at women, but there's solid financial advice in there for everybody, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I did obviously aim it for women because it's my perspective and it's what I'm seeing a lot of in my business, like with the women I meet with. So yes, it comes from a real focus on women. But again, it's because, like I said at the beginning, we have to catch up. I think women need to do more work to get on that equal playing field. Like, women are still unfortunately earning less than men. And so things like that, we need to catch up. We need to be on equal footing with when it comes to finances too. But so the book I wrote it's really that answer to like what's missing, or what I kind of kept seeing time and again. And I think it is that confidence piece that is lacking, because I can tell people, just do this, this, and this. But still, it seems like women maybe aren't doing those things, and they're kind of, taking more like head in the sand, or like, I'll, do it when, or something like that. They're finding ways to put it off, and we're great at, finding ways. We're busy, busy lives. I mean, everyone has busy lives, so it's easy to say, I'll do that another time. But this book is really set to inspire people. I set it up as like an easy read, as something where you read through it and you're like, oh, I can do that. And you can see yourself inside the stories I'm hoping that I share as well, where you don't feel like money is this, unreachable, unachievable, like financial success, that it's, too far removed, or you can't achieve the goals you want to achieve because maybe you're not earning like six figures or something like that. I think a lot of people, have all these beliefs about money that like you have to be like the Elon Musks of the world or something like that to have wealth and to build wealth. But no, like, you can change that money situation from exactly where you are. And I hope that that's what I'm achieving with this book, that it's for at any age, at any stage of life, wherever you are with your finances, to build that confidence so you're ready to take steps. And the steps and the action is really where the magic happens. Like, when we're doing things for our money, when we're not procrastinating, when we're taking small steps of like, oh, I'm gonna, cut back a little bit on these expenses. I noticed that I'm not even using these subscriptions or something like that. Well, here's some extra savings that I can put towards my long-term goals, and every little bit counts. Maybe I can do some work on that money baggage where I'm thinking that I'm not worthy, and I'm that's showing up in my business where I just feel like I'm not getting paid as much as I should be, or something like that. So it takes the reader on this journey of building this like money confidence, this money muscle, that by the end of it, I hope you're saying things like, I love money, and feeling just really a sense of like, calm and confidence and empowerment, where you can go out and take those actions.
Well, congratulations on your book. That is really exciting.
Great.
One thing I'm wondering about from what we're discussing is, and at least I felt this, and I think other people have also shared with me on this platform, that people will say, oh, you're so successful, you've accomplished so much. And then I think, okay, how much am I earning? I start thinking about that from just taking accomplishments and equating it to dollars, and there's not actually a match. So people say, you're really rich in certain areas, and then I think, okay, then I think about how much I have in the bank, for example, and they don't correlate. So in the work that you do you provide coaching as well to help us reframe what success looks like so that we can love money, but we can also love what we're accomplishing in the steps that lead us to making the money?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like there's so much to that too that we could unpack, and it's like that comparison and not thinking we are where we should be or could be. And it's huge with money, and we make so many assumptions, right? When we see, we think people have a lot of wealth when they have the fancy car or the big house. But if you read books like The Millionaire Next Door and whatnot, it's like a lot of millionaires and multimillionaires buy used cars, or or they don't have the fanciest houses. So it's like we really have to change that perspective, because it's very surface level, our views of like, well, what is wealth and what is success? And you're right, there's so much success you can be achieving in your business, and like so much like satisfaction, and you could be still well on track to achieving your financial goals, because they're different for everyone. So it's when we're trying to keep up and compare, it's like keeping up with the Joneses becomes like keeping up with the Kardashians, I say in my book. And it's like, well, then you're not successful unless you're like a billionaire. And how many of people are going to achieve billionaire status? Like, let's be realistic. That's a really tough like level to achieve. And I'm not saying it's not possible, because I do believe anything is possible, but I wanted people to feel okay when it's just like, but that's not your end goal, or that's not something on your radar. Because again, it's like, because if you are constantly looking in like, well, that's the measure of success. You've done all these things in your business. You have an amazing audience. You have all these people telling you how positively you've impacted their lives. But then to think, well, I don't have that much, I don't have multi-millions in the bank or something like that. Then we go right back down to feeling like crap. And it's just like, well, that's not the goal. Like, we're supposed to be happy and enjoy ourselves. This is our lives, and we're supposed to have joy, and yes, it's supposed to be a good experience. So I think, it's really easy to make yourself feel like crap when it comes to money. And I address that too in the book of like, money is nothing in itself. It's actually just a tool and a means to achieving something else. So what we can look at instead is like the values below what it is we want from money. So if you're saying like, wow, if I had all the money in the world, I would go travel to these places and, go see these places I've never been. Well, then maybe it's like you love adventure, and that's a value. And it's like, well, how can you achieve that right now? Or how can you work towards that? Because you don't need $10 million or to be a multimillionaire to make those things happen. Like I found with my own kind of inner work, it was like, I value education. So when I spend money on things like when I did my master's, that felt good to me, because that was something I enjoy doing. I believe in investing in myself. I love growing my knowledge. And so it wasn't like money wasted at all. It was like money I felt good about spending. I feel good about spending money on trips to go places with my kids. And I do value adventure and kind of seeing new places and whatnot. So it's, can we do more work and more inner work to see like, well, what is your actual like values that you're trying to achieve with money, instead of looking at the numbers reflected in your bank account? Because again, it's a good way to feel like crap when you're like, well, that person probably has more, and that person does too. But first off, we don't know how much people have, right? Those signs of wealth don't necessarily equate. People could just be in massive credit card debt. So that's not just that surface level is not going to really give us the full picture, but it's just saying, what would make me really happy if I had all the money in the world today? What would I be doing? And you'll find that you can actually achieve that and do those things in your life right now, that it's not that you need the money. It's sometimes that you just need to dig deeper to just see what those values are. And it's what are the things you want to be doing or focusing more of your time and attention on.
Yeah. Thank you. So many great points that you just mentioned there. Al?
Yeah. I wanted to ask Kalee if you can unpack your subtitle, because your book is titled "Make Money Your Thing," but the subtitle is interesting. It's "Ditch the Shame and Design Your Dream Life." Maybe you can unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, like I guess we kind of like with me and my publisher, we were going back and forth with a few ideas, but I think we really kind of came down to like, what is that sort of icky feeling that people are having sometimes with money, especially women, that, is again my audience that I really sort of share that perspective with. And it was like shame that came up, which is really like deep, right? Shame is so much more than just saying like, oh, I made a bad money choice, or, I shouldn't have spent my money on this, or I bought, I probably spent too much on this purse or something I bought, or shame is something like where it goes into something deeper about yourself. And that's really what I was seeing and what I see with money. It's like when women say things like, it's called make money your thing, because I hear women saying things like, money isn't my thing. I'm not good with math. I'm not good with money. I'm not good with numbers. And they're taking it like as a character trait and something about them, instead of just like, oh, I haven't learned this yet. Or I should maybe spend some time looking at how much money I spend. But they're taking it to be something about themselves. And it's, when it goes to that level, it's that shame, and it becomes something a lot deeper, which is really scary, because it's like, well, how can money, make someone feel bad about themselves and not worthy? And that's where it becomes very dangerous money, right? Where it's like, we're feeling like I can't succeed as a person because of or I'm not succeeding because of the dollar sign in my bank account, or because I spent too much on, on a shopping spree last week. Like, that's really alarming, where it's becoming more of a characteristic about ourselves. And it was even myself, like growing up when we didn't have a lot of money. And I have a story in my book about how, I wanted just one thing for Christmas, and it was the Barbie dream house. And I was like, I knew my mom couldn't afford it. So I asked Santa for it. And, Christmas Day comes, I open all the presents, and there's no Barbie dream house. And, presents for me were more practical gifts, like shoes and clothes and stuff like that. And I took it almost to mean at that age. And again, I was really young, but it was that I'm not worthy, that I'm not enough, that those messages I was hearing of like, no, we don't have money, we can't afford that. It was like, I am not worthy. And so it's that we have to get rid of that shame piece, where we started to take it on as like a characteristic trait about ourselves, because it's not at all. And then, so it's like, let's get rid of that and design your dream life. Because again, it can be whatever you want. And it's not about that you have to be a millionaire or a billionaire. And that's what I tried to achieve with this book too. I think a lot of personal finance books, when you read them, you almost feel like more overwhelmed when you started, thinking like, well, I can't do that. I can't work, 5 jobs and have these extra side hustles because I have kids and this and that. So it's, sometimes they're trying to make you fit in this box, again, that's very numbers oriented, that you have to have all this money to say that you've succeeded, that you've made it. But you can do it right now with where you're at. So it's like, I don't want people to feel any worse about themselves. Like, money's right now like cited as the number one source of stress, and that's really sad to think that.
Such a great point.
Absolutely. Kalee, something else I'd love to have you discuss is people are living longer and outliving their money in many cases. So when I think about, my dad passed away in 2012, he did a ton of research about how to invest his money. And thank God he did. It set my mom up to win. I always say that you're so lucky dad set you up to win, because he put the time and effort, and he aligned himself with financial advisors who, were going to take care of everything after he's gone. How can we do that, whether you're a woman or a man, knowing that you could live an extra 10, 15, 20 years, and you've got to have somebody helping you manage your money?
Yeah, you're right. Like, it's times have changed, and that model of like retirement and retirement income has really changed as well. Like, our longevity, we're living much longer than we ever did. When retirement was designed, like back in the, I don't know, like the 60s, 70s, like when they really were starting to talk about that stage of your life, people weren't living as long. So, that retirement time frame of when they were planning for finances was maybe like 10 years or something like that. And so, we have to kind of catch up with the times again in that sense too, that now people have these really long time frames of what they want as a retirement, because, good old marketing from things like Freedom 55, all of a sudden everyone's like, well, I want to retire at 55. And by all means, that's great. But now consider if average life expectancy, even especially for women, is longer than men. So if we're talking like 90 years old, or if you want to say like you're going to live to 100, I like to think everyone's going to live to 100. So if we say like 100 and we're retiring at 55, that's a lot of time you need to fund for, like, and probably longer than even your working years, right? So it's the whole model has changed, but we haven't caught up on the financial side. So you're right, working with, a professional or someone to help you really take a realistic look at those numbers and what you're looking to achieve, because unfortunately the kind of mindset behind it hasn't caught up with the calculation, right? So it's like, well, now we want to retire even earlier, and we're living even longer. So the math has gotten like a lot different. It's changed. It's gotten a lot longer, that time frame. And people don't realize that. They just think like it's sort of a given that they should just be like, well, I'm going to retire at that age, and everything's just going to line up. Well, unfortunately, you got to do some planning and make sure that that's the case. So I would love to say you can just like wave your magic wand and all is well and your finances are looked after, but all it takes is just planning ahead of time as you have those goals in mind. So if you're very adamant of like, I want to be, financially independent, meaning like able to retire if you so choose, right? You wouldn't have to keep working in a sense of relying on the finances of it. You want to be financially independent by, let's say, 55. Well, you better plan for it. And like the earlier, the better. We can have these conversations with people in their really younger years, because that's huge, the difference you can make if you're having these conversations in your 30s versus even if you're having them in your late 40s or 50s. And, you're getting a little bit close to the deadline there, and then thinking like, oh, what if you haven't done enough? So you're right. It's really going to take a lot more planning and being realistic. And again, being mindful of the fact that the numbers have changed. So if you want a longer retirement and you do have to account for a longer lifespan, life expectancy, you're going to need more money. Like that's how the math works. So anything more you can do now is going to help you in the long run. So if you can increase your savings, find extra savings that you can put towards your long-term goals, that's great, because anything extra, again, it's going to help that calculation. But you do want to have someone either do it yourself, use like an online tool or something like that, or work with a professional to help you understand if those are your goals. Is it achievable? Are you going to run out of money? Because that's a math problem that we can use a software program to figure out the answer for, essentially.
I'd love to build on, first of all, Dr. Jacalyn, that was a great question. And I'd like to build on your answer to that, Kalee. An awful lot of people out there think that you can download an app or read an article in Forbes about 30-second financial planning. And if you could spend maybe a minute or two on why it's valuable to engage a financial advisor and work with somebody rather than take the do-it-yourself route. And maybe you can tell us a little bit what people out there should be calling you. I want to make sure they understand why. And when the program's over, I want to make sure they know how to get a hold of you.
Okay. You're right. Yeah, I like to oversimplify things because I don't want anyone to like be frightened and be like, too much. So sometimes I'm like, it's easy, just do it. But you're right, there's a lot that goes into it. So I don't want to discount financial advisors and planners, because there is very intricate math we use when we are planning these. So it is great if you have the ability or desire, you're thinking, well, I do want to work with a professional, I need some help. And oftentimes that's when people do seek financial advisors and working with financial professionals, when they get to those stages of getting really serious about like, well, how am I going to achieve that goal? I know I want to retire at this age, but I don't know how the numbers work out. So we get really detailed into like the time frame, the different amounts that are going to be coming in from different sources. So we're looking at all your different investment accounts and saying, okay, this account is a taxable account versus this is a non-taxable. And how can we sort of maximize the scenario so you're paying less in taxes and more is going in your pocket by having these money in these different buckets. And by doing this planning ahead of time, we can start telling you where you should be putting the money to make sure that we're optimizing it in your favor. So the computer program and what we're using is like very robust and very great at like optimizing this problem. So it's going to solve it for us. But you're right, like the average person probably doesn't have access to this type of software, and it can get very confusing about how you're putting in all the numbers. Like we're looking at all things from even things like inflation, right? We want to make sure that we're embedding inflation into those numbers and assumptions, versus if you're maybe doing the calculation yourself or using a program, is it using inflation? What inflation rate is it using? So that's a very important consideration that we're adding in. We're adding in kind of investment returns. And then we're also looking at it in a sense of, well, we don't know the investment returns, right? We're putting that in as a placeholder, an assumption. But what we're doing with the plan is we're revisiting it on a regular basis to see, we're sort of plotted out, this is where you should be based on things like, market performance, inflation numbers. But guess what happens? Reality sets in, and then we have a year like last year where inflation goes through the roof and markets, have a really bad year. So we have to plug in those numbers again and make sure in worst case scenarios that we're still on that path, we're still on track. Because if you're not, then it's the best to kind of see it at that point and do some rejigging, do some like looking at the numbers and saying, this is what you're going to have to change. Or it might be that you've made it and planned for those scenarios. So you're saying, okay, you know what, we're still okay, we're still on track because we used more conservative return numbers. Last year was a terrible year, but being mindful of that and kind of how we planned, you're still on track, you're still okay. So the planning, it becomes this like ongoing piece that you're always using with your clients when you're working with like financial planning numbers. And that's just, it's one piece of what you're doing. It's instructing like how we're going to do the investing, because we need to know, what stage of life you're at, what's your time frame when you're looking to retire. So you're right, it is, I like to oversimplify it, but there's a lot of math, like us math people like that part of it, where you can get like right in and dig into the numbers and do all these scenarios, so we can say, well, if this and this happened, this is what it would look like. But that's really what you can expect from a financial professional, is you're going to get that very deeper level of understanding of, where you're at. Are you going to be okay? Where's the money coming from? What's the best way for tax purposes? They're answering all those questions for you that we're often, wondering and left again more confused than when we started. Sometimes when we're reading the articles, it's like when you diagnose yourself, I was guilty of this when I had like some sort of like ailment or not feeling good, and I go to the internet and I'm just like, whoa, like don't do that. I've stopped doing that altogether. So I would say it's similar to that. Sometimes when you're looking at money topics, you leave like more confused and more scared when you're doing the online searches.
That was a great example, because I think we've all done that with
Really?
Dr. Google. It's like, oh, I have this wrong with me, that wrong with me. Kalee, what I'm wondering as we come to the last part of our show is, can you talk a little bit about a person's portfolio in terms of what can be included in there, for example, passive income, and how to diversify your portfolio to help minimize risk?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's going to be different for everyone. So I can give you kind of some generics on it, but of course it's going to be different based on like your risk tolerance, your stage of life. And that's really like when we go into the deep discovery with clients, is where we kind of figure out, like we create a customized portfolio based on what we learn about them. But you're right, like there's different elements, and it's no like one size fits all when it comes to investing, because there's people at stages of life, like I have clients that are young, that are just looking to accumulate for their financial freedom goal. And in that case, well, wow, they can, probably take on a lot more risk at this stage of life in return of, higher potential returns. And the reason they want to do that when they're young is because, this is the best time to be doing it, because you have that long-term time horizon. Because when we zoom out and look at the stock markets on, the very, very long term, it's this upward sloping line. There's, dips, there's valleys, there's things like the financial crisis, recession, there's what happened last year, all those things have sort of occurred. But again, we zoom out, it's still an upward line. So whereas when we're looking for young people that have long-term time horizons, don't need the money, we can probably have more conversation of wanting to take on more potential risk for, again, that higher potential return, versus when we have people in their retirement years. Well, what's the primary concern? it's income generation. They need that ongoing, essentially, paycheck. They need their investments to provide them with income because they're no longer in the workforce. So then we're targeting more of like income paying investments of different sorts. And again, kind of structuring them or picking ones that different depending on like the tax implications of the type of account we're investing in. So if it's a registered account, we don't really care kind of how that income is taxed, versus if it's an account that's a taxable account, we want to target those lower taxable paying investments. So something like that's going to achieve capital gains or dividend income. So you're right. We're designing something different for people at the different stages of life, what they're needing. And then there's always a diversification element, though, no matter what your age, because that still goes back to like that phrase, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's still very true when it comes to investing, because what happens is, on big market events, that sort of sector or that type of investment you're in, if it gets hit harder than everything else, you're going to see major volatility. So last year, technology stocks were hit really hard. So if your whole portfolio was just in technology, you're going to see a lot bigger decline in a market event like that than one where you're more diversified in different sectors, in different countries, and different types of investments, something like stocks and bonds and GICs and things like that, or treasury bills, like things that have more of a no risk attached to them. So there's all kinds of products out there, and I would like thousands. Like, I guess it could make your head spin on trying to figure it out of like which one. It does come down to, I think, too, we need to kind of simplify it, and probably there's too much that exists out there, but there still is always that element of like, we want to customize it for you. We want diversification to protect you on downside. And those are the things essentially we can be doing. Like, I like to always remind people, what is in our control versus what is out of our control. So market performance and what the economy does, unfortunately, that's out of our control. But what we can control is the types of investments we own. We can control your asset allocation, which is how you're allocated to these different investments, bonds versus stocks and equities and whatnot. So those are things we can control. And those are the things we want to work on, because again, we have some ability to sort of maneuver and make changes and set you up best to sort of weather these storms as well. So focusing on what you can control is things like diversification and making sure you're invested in products that are the right fit for you at the right stages of life.
Great.
I love that answer. Very comprehensive. Thank you. Just a final question that I have, and then I'll go over to Al. When people work with you, is this a short-term engagement? Does this last for years? How does that work?
Yeah, good question. You're right. It usually lasts for years. Like, that's the hope, that you get to kind of grow with them and be there beside them through all those goals. Like, people have long-term time horizons. Like I said, everyone lives to 100 in my book. So there's a lot of time, and it's, again, at each stage of life, it's something different that we're looking at, that we're really focusing on. But there's never really a time that you don't necessarily need that assistance and advice and having that professional work with you. So if it does feel like, this is overwhelming, you don't have the time, you don't have the desire, then by all means seek help. Like, look for advisor or a financial professional that you can work with to like offload that to someone else, because you don't want, just the fact that you don't have the time or desire or whatnot being that's completely ignored, because, it's your money. You work very hard for it. You don't want to just like completely sitting on the sidelines and essentially like neglecting it, something that we spend most of our waking hours earning, and then not, kind of not following through, not really giving back time and attention to our money. So and again, if it's really realistic, if you have a busy life, the heavy demands of life, especially when we're on talking about business owners, and so you're really probably caught up in your business and running that. So, don't sort of ignore or neglect your money in the meantime.
Yeah, very good points. Thank you. Al, last question or comment that you have for Kalee?
One last question. It's logistical. I know you're joining us today from Calgary, Canada.
Yeah.
American clients who want to engage you, USA clients who want to engage you, how do they get a hold of you, and can you help them too?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a dual licensed advisor. So I'm licensed in Canada and the US, and very uniquely help a lot of people moving between the borders, because that's a whole
Mm,
nother conversation. We can go on all day
mm,
talking about that. But
yeah,
so I do work with clients in Canada and the US. So best way to get a hold of me, you can reach out to me on my website, which I think I gave you. Yeah, it's kaleeboisvert.com. You can reach out to me on my Instagram. But yeah, there's a contact information, like our contact form you can fill in on there. And I'd be happy to reach out if you do have any questions, any just even comments or things that sort of piqued your interest from this conversation. Just reach out. I'm happy to have a chat.
great.
Thank you, Kalee. I think one final comment, it's really important for people who are out there thinking, I'm too old, or I don't have enough money, or I'm not really sure if I'm a good candidate. What would you say to them?
I don't know. There's always like those excuses, right? And I think that's probably some of our own fears holding us back. So again, I'm all about taking action. So don't let those, once I get here, if I do that, like if those are creeping up, you're like, oh, those are all excuses. Those are fears creeping in. So reach out. Like there's no excuse. There's no sort of wrong answer or bad time or anything like that. It's always better to take action and do something. Maybe even it's just a conversation where it gets your mind going on what you can do right now to start making some changes to work towards your goal. Like I would say, it's always good to have a conversation versus putting it off for another day.
Great, Kalee.
Excellent
Great.
answer. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing all of this great expertise and wisdom with our audience. We hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you,
Thank
everyone, for
you.
listening.
Thank you, Kalee.
Thanks. Bye for now. Chock full of information, right, Al?
It's an excellent example of the business talk show and the kind of information we can bring to an audience. I know, Dr. Jacalyn, that among your many professional experiences, you've also been a financial advisor, working with people on how to manage portfolios, and so this was right up our alley, as they say, and it was a great interview.
Thank you so much, Al. I have to clarify, I love you, but I'm not a financial advisor and haven't been a financial advisor. So because they have to take a lot of exams and licenses, and it's really a full-time commitment. And so I looked into it, but it wasn't for me. So that's why I ended up being here. And this is my calling. So Kalee's found her calling. This is mine. You found your calling. There's something for all of us. We just have to
Great.
realize that money is at the center of it. And to Kalee's point, we spend most of our time making money, and then we could be spending it the other time losing the money or investing the money wisely so that it's working for us while we're working. And then, one day we've accumulated so much and we don't have to work as hard. I think that's the goal.
And Kalee made a great case for calling her so that you don't feel like you have to go it alone. Just a great interview.
Yes, absolutely. Al, thank you for being here. How can people get in touch with you, and what are the services that you can provide?
Easiest way to get a hold of me is al at pro-fit for teams.com, and team building, half-day experience to connect your people with their purpose and motivate them and intrinsically energize them. And we get great results. The participants enjoy it. The bosses love it. And it's very scientific. It's not just fun. It's also very engaged and very specific, and there's a particular process we follow. And so reach out to me by email and I'd be happy to talk about it with you.
All right. Thank you very much, Al. Thank you, everyone. We're coming up with our next show, which is Talking Heads, starring our expert, Caroline Heward. So please join us for that. Thanks, Al. Thanks, Kalee. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Doc.
Bye.